those who are standing, can you come in front and have a seat? So you don't have to stand for the session.
What's fair?
There's a. So, are you doing it? Everybody knows my password.
We had technical people.
No, it flashed. We missed half of it.
Well, they're
Yep, type it again. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. This is stpete.net meetup. I'm John Calloway. Clayton Hunt is on video. We've got Harish Biram talking about accessibility this evening. We do have a meeting every month, first Tuesday of the month, usually in this location. We're having an IoT workshop this Saturday, so if you're interested in that, please sign up, RSVP, let us know you're coming. We'll be doing that at Suncoast Developers Guild from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or until we get tired. We'll have plenty of IoT devices. If you want to buy your own, there's links to buy your own as well. If you order now, Amazon can probably get you something. We'll have lunch and drinks and stuff available there as well, but plenty of fun playing around with IoT devices. We're looking for more presentations next year. So if you're interested in presenting or want to volunteer a coworker, then we'd love to hear from you. If there are interesting topics that you'd like to hear or see, let us know and we'll try to work that out as well. Join us on Facebook groups, follow us on LinkedIn to join the discussion on Meetup. We're always looking for sponsors and so forth as well. So we'll probably head up and get some alcoholic beverages, adult beverages after the presentation on your own dime. So please drink responsibly. We'll probably head over to the Avenue or something just down the street. So please join us and have a lot of fun. We've got stickers and magazines in the back room, as well as probably some leftover pizza and drinks as well. So with that, we'll let Harish go ahead and get started.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Come on, I need more energy. Did you guys see? Yeah. You had some pizza, you had some soda, so you had energy. Now let's burn that energy and take some knowledge with it, right? So I work at Agile Thought. Harish Biram, my name is, and I'm a senior UI consultant with Agile Thought, working with some big clients, Big Four clients, and so on and so forth. So, but I would like to call myself. Recently, I changed my mind. I said, let me call myself, instead of saying senior consultant, UI consultant, actually what I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about web accessibility, and then I'm trying to say an evangelist terms. There used to be a term called developer evangelist in Microsoft. Have you guys known about that?
Yeah.
Developer evangelist. I don't know, nowadays I don't see many people saying developer evangelist, but I think this one, web accessibility evangelist, is the area that I want people to start looking into and focusing more and put some energy, put some innovation, put some guidance and everything. So I said, let's start with me first. Maybe if nobody else wants to call it, let me call myself as web accessibility evangelist because I deeply care about it. Here is stats from cdc.gov. Nothing that has been made up. Everything is coming directly from cdc.gov. 26% of Americans, right, almost like 61 million people, have some level of disability. Some level. It might not be fully disabled, but still. These are the spectrum of different disabilities. Vision, cognitive, hearing, wheelchair, and everything. So there are these. And 2 out of 5 above age 65 has some level of disability. 1 in 4 women, 2 in 5. So going to the statistics, yes, it seems like a lot of people but in the technical world, in the world that we are living in, software development, product development, how many times are we considering accessibility, right? It's very difficult to quantify that. And if we see, the average is saying at least you should consider it 2 out of 5 or 1 out of 4. So at least you should consider it 25% of the time. Are we considering it 25% of the time? Can anybody answer? No, right? Yes, and it starts with me. You would be amazed to know that a blind person drove from Odessa to here, and that is me. I'm a visually blind, but legally blind, but not completely blind. So this is, and I had lost my driving privileges in a few years ago, and that's when I couldn't read the boards, they revoked my license. And I said, what it is, like, I can drive, I know I can drive, I know the routes. And then after 2.5 years of not having the driver's license and being dependent on my wife or Uber or anybody to drive anywhere, it felt like in prison. So I know I can drive, and I drove safely from there to here. So then I researched a little bit more on low vision doctors, and the low vision doctors understand people like me who I have a kind of disease called macular dystrophy. Is anybody familiar with macular degeneration? Okay, so this is similar to that, but being it's born right from the birth. So I slowly graduated in the dystrophy. So I used to have good vision, and then slowly my vision got gradually depleted, and now it is like 20 by 200 or 20 by 400. So with the correction of the contact lens, I can still hardly see the first alphabet. So when I went to the low vision doctor, it was like the low vision doctor this cost $3,500, and this one is for my presentations, or if I want to see 20 feet or something. So $5,500. Every dollar is worth, like, for me, it was like worth spending on this because it is giving me the freedom from the prison that I was going through, and I didn't want to be in the prison of not driving and not being able to communicate, not being able to do my work. And I'm a UI architect at Blooming Brands and other companies before, and I thought, come on, this shouldn't be so difficult for a lot of people, where they should be able to understand that accessibility is something that government has already come up with some rules and regulations with Americans with Disabilities Act, right? Title III, and compliance with that. So why is it that the technical field is not adopting accessibility as much as it is needed? So let's go into a little bit deeper. So what is accessibility? You all have got a paper and it has a definition. I want you to read it with a penny that you have been given. So take the penny, put it in a good distance that you are trying to read. So keep the penny in the middle and try to read the sentence. So let's go ahead and try to do that exercise, because you will understand how
we do it here?
So let me show. So here is the paper, right, which has the definition, and here's a penny that I'm going to put it at the right distance that is comfortable for me to read, but that penny is going to be exactly at the center of my vision. So are you able to read it, or is this penny bothering?
Oh, so you're talking about the fuzzy part that you see in the penny.
So the penny is like this, and you are trying to read the definition on the top, right? And keep the penny and try to focus your central vision to read the content around it.
You got macular degeneration that starts in the center.
Exactly. So that is the reason. So macular degeneration, age-related macular degeneration is one of the very big eye challenges, and it is like you have a penny constantly, a black circle in front of you, and you're trying to read anything, do anything, but you still have a black circle in front of you. So it's very, very challenging. And if that is the case, so that, and then if you see the last line, can anybody read that last line?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
Accessibility first design products or environments for people with disabilities.
You have an extra piece
Yeah.
of paper.
It's the
that
last
you want,
line.
Daniel?
yeah, the
the
last
last line.
the last
Wheelchairs.
Was it?
Including the IT world, accessibility often describes hardware and software designed to help
The
those.
same sentence, but big text.
So looks like Robert did read it. So can you read it out loud for everybody? What is accessibility,
The
Robert?
last sentence or the small
Oh,
one?
yeah. The full definition. You can read the big one. You can read the big one out.
In the IT world, accessibility often describes the hardware and software designed to help those who experience disabilities.
Yeah. So that is basically accessibility, right? And the challenge is not about knowing what accessibility is, but how to help the people with disabilities and impairments and how to make their lives more easier. Because if the government has not introduced those laws in 70s and early years of that, there would not have been public ramps in the public libraries, right? So it's helping people with cognitive, visual, auditory, and speech disorders, right? All of these disorders, coming up with a solution for people who have accessibility needs. So let's take one. If a construction of a public building, a public library did not think about accessibility, they would have to add accessibility at the later on, right? And civil engineering field has been matured for 100+ years, or hundreds of years, and software engineering, not even 50 years. It's not even matured for 50 years, right? But they have accommodated accessibility right from the get-go. And that's why I have a huge respect for civil engineering field, where public buildings, any public places, right, hospitals and any places, accessibility is already there. And even in this building, you see an accessibility ramp, right? So if you don't do accessibility at the initial stage or thinking during the design stage and development stage, then you end up with a ramp that you are having to retrofit as if it is an accessibility ramp, right, for the wheelchair. So developing for accessibility helps everybody, not just so you can have a heavy machinery or heavy luggage taken through the ramp. It is going to help with kids with strollers, or parents with strollers, senior citizens in an emergency situation. If you have a person who needs an emergency care, that person is going to take that. It's been taken on the stretcher, and accessibility ramp helps within no time, right? So we don't think about this on the day-to-day basis because it is for a given. Because we are given with accessibility in the public places. However, accessibility is not required in the private places, right? In your homes, nobody puts it until you need it. So if you have a person in the family who needs accessibility, then you would have already constructed a ramp, right? but this is the scenario with government agencies and private agencies, private sector. So government agencies, I really appreciate, no matter how many people don't like it, but government has done an excellent job with accessibility people, because if they haven't done that, a lot of people like me would have been on disability insurance, right? Or trying to be staying at home, and I don't like to stay at home. I want to give my knowledge, information, everything to the community, and to also make a living for my family, right? So if the government did not do that, then I would not have been here. So it is just a matter of time before people are going to be more and more aware about these laws and scenarios, and how it is going to be applicable in the day-to-day scenario of a software development, right? So we understand that accessibility helps everybody in the civil engineering field. So now, how does it help for the software engineering field, right? It helps all these people, cognitive, visual, speech, and other disorders. And it avoids your organization getting sued by companies or sued by individuals who have recognized that your website or application or software product or any services are not accessible. So this is very serious title ADA, and now you are going to have to deal with, your organization has to deal with United States legislation, and you have to have a huge amount of proof that your organization is trying to accommodate accessibility, or in the process of it. If not, you will be fined. And how many of you read accessibility lawsuits here? Has anybody read on news that somebody has been sued, some company has been sued for accessibility?
I just hear about some locals going out to the hotels, trying to find hotels and don't have accessibility, and they're suing the hotel just to get money. But I understand the whole point is
Yes.
to help the people, but
Yeah, I want to address that point. That's a right point. I wanted to also make note of it during this presentation. Yes, these companies, I agree that they're doing the right thing, but they are doing for the wrong reason. They want to accumulate millions of dollars or dollars, whatever they are suing. The right way to do is take that, if they earn $10,000 by suing a company, 9,000 should be gone back to accessibility needs, like wheelchair production or visual lenses or these kind of things. It needs to go to all non-profit organizations that give these services, products and services. 10% they can keep it for their services because they have found these loopholes. But all the $10,000 are going to this company and individual who has just exploited this law, right? I am a UI architect myself. I know the software, and I am a legally blind person. So it is not difficult for me to go to the companies, but I want to do the right thing, and I want people who are suing the companies, especially big companies, 90% of whatever you are going to earn has to go back to people who are disabled. So a person who needs disability, a wheelchair, needs to get a wheelchair, or a person who needs glasses, hearing aids, they need to get that. So then, yeah, I agree with that. If you are doing just that $10,000, or you are pocketing in yourself, I'm against that. Does that make sense? Right. So against the, and this is the number of stats that I've got online, how the lawsuits have been going up, and Florida is number 3 in accessibility lawsuits, Title III and other things. So it has been going up and up. So this session is to bring the awareness to the organizations to start taking accessibility seriously. And if you have a public website, and if you have e-commerce on the public website, if you're doing e-commerce on the public website, then you need to be accessible. And also if you're doing business with government. It also helps with search engine optimization, right? So people try to make their websites, products and services, their commerce and everything as much accessible as they want, right? But as soon as they incorporate all the rules for accessibility in their code, it's going to automatically get ranked higher, because accessibility, Google takes it seriously to same way like mobile-friendly website. So if you have a mobile-friendly website, Google ranks you higher up versus another product and service that is not mobile-friendly. So if you do accessibility, your ranking is high. All the algorithms have already been done, so they automatically know if you are providing the data or the content with accessibility. So then here is the catch: user experience design. So people did not know in the software engineering industry, like, where should we put accessibility, because this is a big area by itself. Not everybody understands it, and not everybody knows how to do it, and not everybody knows how to design for it. So since it comes under the design, it kind of has a leg in the design. So they took accessibility and they just put it inside of user experience, right? And user experience has been growing exponentially in the last 15 years. So they've gone from just kind of a design thing to a new terminology called user experience, and from user experience they've gone even bigger, and it became customer experience and client experience along with user experience. So now it had become so big that they had to send client experience or customer experience as a different unit, that is marketing strategy and experience of the clients and everything. So that became customer experience, right? And then user experience could just focus on application development, design and architecture and everything. So once the user experience has got this, now they have so much other things on their plate. User experience design, architecture, user experience architecture and everything, information architecture, visual design, prototyping and everything. And accessibility was given to them, so, or they probably adopted accessibility because of a lost child. So they didn't know where to keep it, but again, they said, okay, accessibility is a design constraint or design philosophy, so, and it is part of usability. So what they did is they pushed it to as a grandchild of them. So now you need to have a user experience team that knows what they are doing, and then they have to know about usability, and the usability needs to know about accessibility, and then they design it. So I do not think, being a software professional myself, that accessibility should just be a user experience concern. It is a concern of design, yes, user experience, but it's a concern of software architecture. It's a concern of design and development, and it's also a concern of testing as well. So accessibility testing needs to be done. So that means you need to impersonate users with disabilities, or you need to figure out users with disabilities. So how hard is that? Sometimes it's as easy as like how I showed you to read a text with the coin in front of you, or you go to a website, you can easily read right away. Close your eyes and start reading it with an assistive technology. So there are a lot of assistive technologies like visual desktop assistants which can read out the text for you. So try to, just for an exercise, when you go home, like in this week, just close your eyes and try to understand information. That's very easy, right? To close your eyes, and now you try to understand the information. So now you're going to do key tabbing and try to hear what the assistive technology is telling you. So my argument for it is not a single discipline. It is not just a discipline of user experience, that it is a sub-discipline of user experience. Accessibility needs to be aware. We need to go to the, so once we do accessibility, so you have done good design. So the fact that you have done accessibility makes me think that you have already done a good design of your application, software, website, product, services, anything like that, right? So you have done, and you are protected against the lawsuits. So nobody can sue you because you are already in the standard ways. So let's go. So as I talked earlier, there's section 508, Americans with disabilities, and the other things is guidelines. The guidelines are Web Accessibility Content Guidelines 2.1, which is, so how it is structured. Let me explain you the structure. World Wide Web Consortium, right? Everybody knows WWWC Consortium, which is the standard governance of all the World Wide Web. Because of them, we are able to do internet as a standard way, right? They have an initiative called Web Accessibility Initiative, and this is a huge project by itself, which is volunteered by a lot of people from all over the world, different countries, different regions, and different sectors, and different kind of accessibility needs. That project, Web Accessibility Initiative, has a group called Working Group, Web Accessibility Working Group, Web Accessibility Conformance Guidelines Working. It's a mouthful to say that, working group. So what they have done as a phenomenal job of providing the guidelines and the standards by themselves and showing them how it should be done. So I really applaud their work, and kudos to the whole team who has put endless number of hours trying to get these standards to the software engineering field. So these guys are pioneers who are trying to mature the software engineering discipline to the level of civil engineering discipline. But I seriously think there is still so much work to be done, and the organizations, private and public, everybody needs to take it as a standard that they have to implement. So let's see, Section 5. It was published in 1986, right? And it was updated in 2017, and targeting websites developed. So if you're working with the government, or if you're in a government organization, if you take anything that GOV, it is 100% accessible, right? They made it AAA accessible. So that means they want all of the users who are coming to the .gov website have a solution to understand the information. It could be legally blind, it could be blind, it could be speech disorder or cognitive disorders, or it could be hearing disorder. Anything they have addressed. .gov site. .gov site will not go to production without completely meeting the accessibility standards. So government has been setting a standard, and it's raising the bar up high, right? I know we all sometimes we don't appreciate the government, but I appreciate on this scale that it has set the standard way up, and it has been leading by an example. It has been for the last X number of years, right? It's been leading as an example to meet to that standard of AAA standards. But however, they have reduced, and it's an acceptable guidelines that if you meet a AA standard, that is enough to be a accessibility certified web application, product, or services. So more information you can look up at the .gov, section 5.gov. So web accessibility conformance guidelines, right? So this is a more international standardization. So it is not just United States, not just UK, it is from all the countries. All the countries in the world have agreed to this kind of a standardization with web WCGA, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And these ones are, if you follow these guidelines and standards and make your products and services to that level, then you are automatically meeting the AA. If you meet to that AA level, you have passed the accessibility certification. So if you do not meet the AA guidelines, if you just have A guidelines, which will go in later, then you are not meeting the guidelines. So it was published, the recent revision is published in 2018, and 2.1 is the latest revision. It is guided by 4 principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So these are the 4 guiding principles for any criteria. So any information needs to be, your users need to be able to perceive it. They need to be able to understand it. They need to be able to, it should be robust enough that you click on a button and something happens and you don't even know what's happening. It's flaky. You don't want flakiness in the website. So users should not be confused. So operable, and they need to be able to operate the information or the interface, user interface, accessibility user interface. They need to be able to operate either with hands or with mouse or whatever they choose to. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So these in the accessibility, it's called as POUR, P-O-U-R, POUR principles. So as I was talking earlier, there are 3 levels of maturity in terms of WCAG, or they call it WCAG or WCAG. It's level A is the most basic. That means you have a little bit of accessibility needs, but you haven't met all the needs. The next level is level AA, which is the biggest and most challenging barriers have been addressed. So that means if you reach this level, the AA level is everything A plus more, right? So once you reach to this level, you have met most of the criteria. Then the last level is the AAA, which is the 100% level that your content is so, like government sites. Your content is so much mature in terms of accessibility needs that people can easily understand the information. Any person with any disability can still get the information and interact with the information, not just get the information, but interact and complete the task. For example, if that person is blind person, he's trying to order a pizza on the Domino's site, right? Domino's site should be able to provide that, right? And the Domino's site, if doesn't provide it, then he or she has failed in terms of operability. Did he or she fail, or did that website fail? I think it's a website, right? And I think there was a recent lawsuit against Domino's for accessibility reasons. So if you're conducting e-commerce, it is as soon as possible getting into the bandwagon of making it accessible is going to make your organization much more stable. So how it is structured is it has these principles like perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, and those are the guidelines. And then they have the success criteria. And then from there, they go into the principles, guidelines, and success criteria. And the way the information is laid out on the website is not that, they have a lot of information, but you need to understand visually how this information flows through. So to make it more easier, how they have, and these are some of the latest version, 2018, WCAG 2.1 came up with all of these additional versions, and these additional requirements are mostly for mobile devices, responsive, friendly, and orientation, portrait, all that. So everything is covered in the 2.1, especially nowadays how people are using the internet on the mobile devices and so on. So they have updated to the latest. So as I said, 4 principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And with these 4 principles, they have come up with exactly 13 guidelines, right? And these 13 guidelines are divided into 78 criteria. So an accessibility team, let's say in a Microsoft or Apple company, Google, they would have definitely mastered this, and they know exactly what the content, where the content needs to be accessible and how it needs to be made sure. So the accessibility team are the guardians of these guidelines and the standards. And if there is a criteria not met, then they will probably work on it and make it happy. So I'm so thankful that Microsoft and Apple and all these companies have embedded accessibility in one of their operating systems feature, right? Without a magnifier, I cannot work. Without my text zooming or text increasing size in my mobile phone, I cannot do texting. I cannot. So I'm so thankful for all these big companies who has taken accessibility as their one of the main disciplines and made sure the operating systems or the platforms are rolled out with accessibility. So here's one of the criteria, right? So let's look at, I'll not share all the 78 because we don't have time. I'll share only one of each example, A, AA, AAA, and then we'll go into code examples. I know I'm giving a lot of high level information. We'll go into the code level information too next. So I need a volunteer to read this slide. Anybody? Read out loud. Come on. Yes.
Right. So all non-text content that's presented to the user has a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose. So add a text alternative to all of your images, add a text alternative to your audio and video, a succinct description of the topic, and add a name to all of your controls such as search or submit.
Is it clear enough? Sometimes people get confused. Oh, accessibility has so much guidelines and it's very confusing. But if you take one piece at a time and simplify it, and you can easily see that all they're asking is to provide alternate content. So if you have an image, you need to, for a visually blind person, they cannot know what the image is. So you need to give an alternate text like, oh, you are seeing a beautiful beach in the Florida Daytona Beach, something like that, right? So now the user will know, oh, it's a beach photo of Daytona Beach. That's it. And then if there's a video content, right? That video content, if a blind person is saying that they should hear it or hear what the video is giving information about. If a deaf person is seeing, they need to have the captioning. So closed caption. So if you have that text about what the video is trying to convey, that is exactly a deaf person can still understand what by reading that sentence. So making sure our websites and the content, the video content, so if anytime you provide a video content, upload anything on the public internet, try to add some text to it or a transcript. If you cannot add each individual screen frame, at least add a transcript so somebody else can easily understand the information that you're providing as the web, as the video. So next volunteer with a louder voice. Anybody?
I can go.
Yes, go louder.
Content is not restricted to view in operation to a single display orientation. Example 1, online video site. The video is shown in either portrait or in landscape based on the user's chosen orientation. Example 2, messaging website. A messaging website can display messages in both portrait and landscape orientations. Example 3, e-reader web app. An e-reader web app can display the contents of a book in both portrait and landscape orientation.
Does that make sense?
Why portrait and landscape? What difference does that make?
Portrait and landscape. So
I understand what it is, but why both?
why both? Yeah, when especially for me, I like landscape because I can read more content in one line, and I have zoom text. I zoom text until 400 or 500, and then I want content to not be scrolling each and every word. I don't want to scroll.
Yeah.
So if you can understand the life of a person who's trying to scroll, right? So at least
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's level AA. If you met this guideline, then you have passed this test of orientation. So most of the time, when you're watching even the videos, right? Sometimes the videos are coming in a portrait or landscape, and then you automatically are orienting your mobile device to see it's at 100% screen, right? And we are automatically doing that because we know that sometimes these videos get scaled, and we can see more information in the landscape or more information in the portrait, depending on how the video has been taken. So there's a guideline for that. This one, level AAA. So we saw level A, level AA, level AAA. Any other volunteer who can? Yes,
I'll do it.
go for it.
The size of the target for pointer inputs is at least 44 by 44 CSS pixels, except when equivalent, the target is available through an equivalent link or control on the same page that is at least 44 by 44 CSS pixels. In line, the target is a sentence or a block of text. User agent control, the size of the target is determined by the user agent and is not modified by the author. Or essential, a particular presentation of the target is essential to the information being conveyed.
Yeah. So continuation of that.
So
What is what is the problem that we are trying to solve here, right? With level AAA 2.5.5. So that is the guideline, and that's the criteria. The problem is a retired person he has a shaky hand, and he's trying to use the application, and when he's trying to use the application, instead of going to the submit or save, because of his shaking hand, he's hitting the cancel. So that kind of a person, there's a lot of people like that, right? Where they don't have the dexterity with the hands, and for them, the way it is solved is having a bigger text. Nowadays, 15 years ago, how the websites used to be and how the websites are now, with bigger buttons, with bigger text area, with the flat design, with the material design, and whatever designs that have been coming up with schematic design. They have left schematic design, gradients and other things as a thing of the past. Now it's flat and material design, mostly material. So you still have big enough content area to be able to click or touch or do anything like Google calls it as FAB, floating action button. So this floating action button is like a round circle, either it's a plus to add a member, it's a call or all this. So you have enough area. So they are meeting AAA guideline 2.5.5. So when we are designing applications and developing it and architecting it, let's consider that text area. How much text do we really need? And if you see, a lot of websites are available to give you guidance on how big text area should be, and what is the length as it is already defining 44 by 44. If you want an icon, you need to at least have 44 by 44 so they can easily touch or click or do an action that they are trying to do. So when everything is done, that person is very happy because now he can easily touch a save button or a submit button instead of hitting the cancel, right? That's level AAA guideline. And if you meet that, you have met one of the biggest level of accessibility achievements. So here's one. We'll start going into the code now. So anybody volunteer to read one more? Yeah, Clayton, can you go ahead and read one more?
Sure. No loss of content or functionality occurs by setting the following. Line height is 1.5 times font size, 2 times font size spacing after paragraphs, letter spacing is at least 0.12 times font size, and word space at least 1.6 times font size.
Yeah. So once you start understanding this information and how to design and architect and develop, so this can be translated directly into the code, right? And here's the code. It's easy CSS classes, and you have given relative fonts are much better than absolute pixel fonts because they can scale much better and the whole content is adaptable with the screen. So you have given the relative font M's and 1.5, and then you have given the word spacing, and this is it. So 5 lines of code and you're already meeting one of the AA standards. So it is just a book that people haven't opened to see. It's an easy book, but they don't have time, and especially because the product needs to go into production because of the market. And one of the challenges I want to challenge whoever is providing services in products and services online or even internally, is a 25% of population who have disability, right? And they could benefit by being employed by your organization. And then whatever products and services that your organization is providing, that products and services used by 25% more because you have addressed the accessibility needs. And once you have addressed that, they're going to use your site than another site, because site A is, your site is more expensive because you have provided the accessibility level of conformance, and you have stated that in your privacy statement your accessibility level is AA or even higher. So at that point, they are going to pay more for your services and products because they love the experience of accessible person. And the other one is B, and it doesn't provide the needs. So you would pay for that. So for me, I liked iPhone, and I always kept with the iPhone because it has given me all the tools necessary for my accessibility needs. So I just kept with it, and I don't even want to look at Android. Android might be putting it because I'm so comfortable that unless it is a game changer that it can beat Apple in terms of accessibility, then I will look into it. So I'm open to it, but right now I need to be having a debate with whoever from Android wants to show me. So here's the website, understanding web WCAG 2.1, and here is all of the guidelines and everything listed. It's if you're having challenges sleeping in the night, you can take up this, and then it is guaranteed that you will sleep in 5 minutes. So let's talk about accessibility tree. Oh, yes, yeah, accessibility. So if you know about the HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? So HTML is hypertext markup language, right? You're writing the presentation layer along with the CSS and JavaScript. JavaScript is giving you the interaction for that hypertext HTML. So what it is constructing is a DOM tree, document object model. So everything is converted into the DOM, and then all the operations are performed on the DOM tree. But at the same time, what browsers are doing these days are as they produce a user interface, they also give you another tree called accessibility tree. This accessibility tree is guided by different attributes, and once you hook into these attributes, you are helping the assistive technology to convey the information correctly. So these assistive technologies can be screen readers, can be text readers, or text to any type of JAWS is one of the famous accessibility assistive technology. So any screen readers can start looking into the accessibility tree and give the information to the user. So what you have done by coding for accessibility, you have not only provided your regular functionality, you also increased your website's 25% more people, right? So you have increased your population where it can go to more number of people now than before. So it is a win-win-win situation. Yes, it is an investment, but that investment is very small when it is designing and developing stages. But that investment becomes higher when you have to go back and retrofit your applications to that level. Any questions with accessibility tree? So let's break down all this high level into the detail, right? So we talked about the accessibility tree. Just think about DOM tree and accessibility tree. And the way the DOM is constructed, the accessibility tree is also constructed similarly like that, and it is available through the browser. So here is the example of HTML. I'm not going to read the slide. You know HTML, and if you see how the accessibility tree is constructed for that particular HTML elements, native elements. So one of the strong recommendations from W3C consortium and almost everybody who does accessibility is try to stick with HTML elements, and if not, if you need to go to a specialized control, then come back with have some attributes that will address the accessibility needs, like web ARIA or something like that. We'll go into that details later, but here's how the accessibility tree looks like or feels like. Or now the assistive technology comes over here and starts reading this information to the user.
Excuse me.
Yes.
This accessibility tree.
Yes.
Okay, right in your HTML, you don't have a lot of ARIA or anything built into it. Is it able to build that tree without you having specialized?
Yeah, if you use the HTML, yes, it has native built-in attributes.
No, I mean with that particular HTML you got right now, nothing else on that particular HTML.
Yeah.
Does it build the accessibility tree?
Yes, this is the accessibility tree, and it doesn't have any ARIA.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have any ARIA because it automatically supports. ARIA is for the controls that doesn't support that. So you need to bring in ARIA to make it as robust as HTML elements, and they have been designed by W3C, right? So they built it ground up, and this is the reason why people say try to use HTML elements to the maximum extent, and if you cannot, then there is another alternative for it. So programmatic semantics, right? So here's the label, and here's a select combo box. So for the user now, he is visually blind, and he wants to select an aisle seat that is corner or middle or window, whatever it is, right? So once you enable the accessibility, so first thing that it looks for is the role. So role is very important because it will explain what operation that HTML element is going to do for the user. So as soon as it says combo box, it says, this is how assistive technology reads it to the user, role combo box. And then as soon as the user hears it's a combo box, he or she knows that it is something to select, right? And it says preferred aisle seat, name. So what it takes the label and puts it as a name. So combo box for preferred aisle seat. So now the user is getting more information. He knows that he needs to select the seat, and he knows what it is for. And then it says collapse. So if it is collapsed, it will tell, yeah, it's collapsed. Now you can open it, and the state will say open. So now you have 3 different options, right? 1, 2, 3 options. And then once you select the value, he selected an aisle seat. So now the user is happy. He has selected the aisle seat in his journey, and he can go forward because they have used simple elements, HTML elements, and they did not have to do much rather than naming and correctly formatting the elements. So implicit semantics, that's what, as the gentleman asked now, right? HTML has those implicit semantics, and then that provides those native assistive technologies understand how to interpret them. So assistive technology will go to here and say it's a text field username. And then it was going to say that it's a button. So it's going to see the role, and it says the role button, and it says button, and the button has click me, right? So then it will read click me. And then the combo box, I'll see, right? We looked at the example earlier. That one. Landmarks. This is very, very, very important, especially if you have a website like Amazon, right? Where you have millions of products, millions of users, and huge amount of content, and how the users who cannot see can navigate into this. So if you open up Amazon's mega menu, you see hundreds of links, right? But at that particular point of time, he or she might be looking for just my previous orders, right? I want to reorder something. So that person needs to be given shortcuts, because if you make them go from street 1 to 100 by following exactly the same scenario, by the time they reach to the 100th step, that's where what they are looking for is, they're going to be tired. They're going to at least give up by not going 100 steps, right? But if you provide it in 1, 2, 3, 4th step, they are going to still go there, because 4 steps is better than 100 steps. So landmarks are these schematic elements using H1 to H6 from HTML, right? It is a huge advantage for the page to be understood. So it can go H1, H2, H3, H1, H5, 6, and then the main. And these are the new HTML5 elements, main, footer, nav, all these that can easily take user to the content where they are navigating, or they are seeing the footer, etc. And if the elements are not structured like this, when you tab, or when a user is tabbing, it is going through each sequential order, and probably they are looking for something in the footer, then it would be going, imagine without having a footer, it's going to read all the H1s, div tags, span tags, H1s, paragraph tags there, and then it's going to go to the footer, right? So landmarks are very important to be able to structure your HTML in such a way that it can easily be understood. Then here is an element which looks like a button, but it's not a button. It's a div class, right? With sign up table. So a designer or a developer who is fancy, he thought, okay, let's make it nice, glossy and tiny. But he has broken the accessibility rule, right? Now the users will come to this, and in the assistive technology, and then it will read up as sign up group. Sign up group. What is group? Div is a group of elements, of span tags, paragraphs, anything. It's a group. So it's what assistive technology is reading is, it's a group. Okay, it's a group, and the user is trying to understand, where is the button for me to sign up? It's a group. So how will the user know that he has to click sign up button, which it's not a group, it's a button? So that is one of the reasons why you at least have to introduce ARIA at this point and tell what exactly it is, or use the native elements because you can still use a button and style the button like that, right? You don't have to use a div tag for that.
You're going to show us what it is, right? With the ARIA.
What the ARIA? Yeah, in the few.
Okay.
Right now it doesn't show, but in the next slide we have.
Okay.
So, yeah, the gentleman has been asking about the ARIA. This is one of the other ways to bring accessibility to the native elements or non-native element, or the way the div has been structured as a button. Then you have to use ARIA to make sure that accessibility for rich internet applications, these are the special tags that have been allowed for attributes that can be added so the users can understand it. So it does not modify the behavior. So it adds the attribute, but it does not interfere with any of the functionality, what it does, right? So yeah, I already spoke ahead. Does not change the behavior. It's a band-aid. So what does ARIA, where does ARIA step in? So HTML, here's the DOM. We talked about the DOM tree. We talked about the accessibility tree. And this is exactly where ARIA sits. ARIA steps into that and adds few attributes, and then it makes the application assistive technology know about that. It's not a div tag, it's a button, it's a sign up button, it's not a sign up group. So that's where ARIA helps. And there's a huge amount of, again, reading whenever you're not able to sleep. Go to ARIA. If you have already completed the WCAG 2.1 guidelines, come to this. There's more. Then you can start doing. And the example for the checkbox. So if you just look at how the checkbox is, its states is defined, and how the states change, and how you can use a checkbox with ARIA. That's a good example. So label, of course, labeling any element is hugely important. Never, if there's an element that you are not labeling, rethink about that, how the assistive technology has to convey this information to the user, right? So ARIA label helps much more better to do that, right? If you're using a hamburger menu, we are all familiar with this more menu, hamburger menu, or whatever we call it. So button ID, and it says ARIA label main menu. So as soon as the assistive technology comes over here, or hovers over here, or taps over here, it says main menu button. So they easily understand, because of the ARIA label, that it is a main menu button, and they can touch or click or execute the operation to open it, right? Then ARIA labeled by, right? This one is to be able to take this button, right, and ask, like, it's almost like jQuery, adding more and more classes, right? So how you can append, or how you can add on with a dot the functionality. So you can you can add more classes to this, and it will say ARIA labeled by. You are taking a button and you are saying ARIA labeled by. So you are taking the LBL control. So LBL control is this one, which is an H2, right? And it's men's outerwear. So men's outerwear is the label, and then you are giving a button between. So then it says shop now. So it comes to this. It's self-referencing it. But it needs to go to the text for it. So how it's going to read is men's outerwear shop now button. So just by adding one attribute, ARIA labeled by, and two references to the two controls that needs to read out text, you have made the life of a user much happier. If not, that user might not even know what, and if it is, they will know shop now, but the users it will read as shop now button, but they will not know it's men's outerwear button. So that's when they understand much better with using ARIA controls, ARIA attributes. And here is the Chrome dev tools for accessibility. So how many of you know that Chrome offers accessibility tab? Very few people, right? Even I had to discover it from months ago. So there is a tab for accessibility when you go to the elements. So when you do your dev tools in the Chrome, go to elements, and the last tab will be the accessibility. Even Chrome is putting accessibility at the last.
Good point.
Yeah. So once you get that, the sign up button and sign up checkbox, and here is how the black one is how assistive technology is reading the information. So sign up checkbox, right? Since it's a checkbox, yeah, checkbox. So that means when you check this state changes over here, and the assistive technology says sign up, check, uncheck, checkbox. And here is the roles, how the accessibility is in accessibility tree has been constructed, and how the assistive technology is going to rely solely on this and read this information to the user. So it cannot give all this information to the user because it is based off information. HTML tag, user would not know what an HTML is or a paragraph tag is, right? So that's why they need only the information that's pertinent to them. So that's one thing. So make sure next time, just for the fun, if you have more time in your development and you say, let me make it accessible, let me see how it is going to work. Start playing with these tools and criteria, and you will see how much you will have more satisfaction, because if your product and services is going to outside in the public internet, then it's definitely somebody is going to use it with accessibility. It's 100% guarantee if there is, because if 1/4 of the population needs some level of accessibility solutions, then it is definitely there. And it's the right thing to do, to be able to do during the design. And it's just that the government has not mandated it for any software application, right? And government will not do it for the private organizations, because it's private organizations' responsibility to manage their own business and manage their own clients. But if it comes to the public, if their private organization product and services comes to the public internet, that's where everybody is in the public internet, and it becomes a responsibility of the private organization to provide services like how government provides as the GOV, as an example.
What would be the difference if, obviously Domino's is available to the public, me as a public person can create an account, log in, and I can purchase something. What if I had a line of business application? Does that segment me off from that requirement of the law?
Line of business, which is internal, right? Internal or external?
It'd be internal to the business.
Internal to business, yeah. Law doesn't dictate that internally you have to do it.
So even providing accessibility to the employees.
Yes, you don't. Government is not going to interfere with your internal applications. If your application is coming external and somebody, then it's a requirement where everybody needs to be accessible. But internal applications are not mandated. However, it's going to increase your business with you have more employees, and your employees are going to be retained, because let's say if you have employed a person whose skill set you can use it, and there is your competitor doesn't provide that opportunity for that person is going to work for you, and is probably thankful because he doesn't have to be on the disability insurance, and he can start working. He or she can start working, right? So it's the right thing to do. You'll get more retention, more loyal employees, and also you'll get more customers also if those services are going beyond, right? It's enterprise to enterprise application or line of business application, anything.
Cool.
Yeah. Any question? Yes.
Yeah, can you show one of these screen readers in action? I don't think I've ever seen one.
Yeah, but it's going to be a little bit of difficult.
Because it's hard for me to relate to what this size if we don't see it. And I've been coaching for over 3 years. I've never had an opportunity to see how a disabled person uses a computer.
Yes, so I can show it, one of the screen readers, especially from the Microsoft. And then here is how everything is working, right? So as developers, you are authoring this technology. You are authoring the product and services, websites, applications, whatever it is, Windows, desktop, and you have the tools to succeed with all the guidelines and everything. And here is how the users are going to use the user agent, which is the browser or a mobile app or anything, to get that information. So this is how understanding from this perspective. So I'm at both ends, so I can understand this perspective and that perspective. That's why this is very important for technologists and also users to also not everybody provides accessible website, right? So users will just leave because they cannot understand the information. So if you want to increase the readability, if you want to increase, and there are companies. Now there are a lot of companies whose business is accessibility, accessibility in mind. There's so many companies that are they only do audio eye. Audio eye is like there's an icon like a man, and then you click on it, and it will give you the tools to make your website accessible. So there are companies that are just doing this as a business, providing the tools and technologies that will have non-conformance websites to be conformant. And proposal, so here is my pitch, right? If you take about the software industry nowadays, it has architecture, solution architecture, technical architecture, whatever you want to call, product, software architecture, anything. It has business discipline, business analysts or product owner discipline. It has a development discipline, right? It has a user experience design as a discipline, quality assurance as a discipline, and this mostly like QA, load and performance tests. So where is accessibility here? Nowhere, right? So now let's try to give this and jump up, right? And see, and it's going to get us maturity. So accessibility becomes one of the discipline, but there's going to be a challenge because user experience folks have been dealing this as their grandchild, and now we are asking them to leave their grandchild. Because I think it has got enough maturity. The government has done, and WCHE has already done a huge amount of work. It's a cross-cutting discipline. It's no longer user experience concern. It is a concern for architecture. A software architect has a need, and a product owner, business analyst has needs to understand the product needs to be serving other people, not just a couple of users or few users. And it could be one of its own discipline. And if it becomes its own discipline, if in my lifetime, if I can see that as its own discipline, then I could see accessibility architect, I could see accessibility PO, people who are just making sure the product and services are having an accessibility developer or a software engineer who is specialized in making sure everything is accessible, an engineer and a quality assurance accessibility. So it is. And then there is a process for accessibility. There is assessment. You can go into the website and assess. There are tools and services that are available online. Some of them are free and some of them are not. That you can assess, and then you can do the remediation, and they'll assess, and they'll tell these are the problems. And sometimes they don't tell all the problems. They only tell the 30%. The 70% has to be done manually. Somebody has to look through the website, each page, each link, each information, each video, each image, and come up with where it is failing, and then the remediation process, and then the validation, fixing all the defects, and then validate that. So accessibility conformance statement. So once you have this accessibility conformance statement, it adds value to your website, right? It in the SEO, it comes higher, and it also says that you have taken care of accessibility needs, and here's how your statement is going to say, like an example of a statement. And you provide, we know we are not providing AAA level of accessibility, but we are also providing AA level, and we are looking for more conformance, whatever you want to state, and this is going to add huge amount of value. Excuse me. And then what government organizations, so let's say your company, private or public, whatever it is, if you're trying to work with a government organization on a big project with government, let's say healthcare.gov, right? And healthcare.gov wanted to work with vendors, they would have, they have 100% chosen a vendor that can provide accessibility. So if you were one of the top-notch pioneers in the software, but you have left the accessibility field, and this person, this organization is not as top-notch as you, but he has provided accessibility services, then they are going to go with this because that's what the law they have, and they are abiding by the law. So that's the statement. So action items, right? So learn ourselves, help our organizations, and start implementing in a design, development, and architecture phases. Start asking questions to your product owners or business analysts, and start asking your organization, how can you, if you have time and you are waiting for something else, then start debugging with accessibility and start understanding, is the application doing this? So I'm assuming most of us are developers and some of us are architects or junior engineers. Anybody, you can benefit from this. So our goal is to make things accessible, to make sure others' lives are easy. And if you cannot think about other person, just think about me, because we do this. So let's try to see, because I haven't used the way this is my assistive technology, a lot of devices that will help see me. So one thing you will notice, my pointer is so big, okay, and I cannot use anything without a magnifier. So now, let's say accessibility. These are all my things. This is true. So we need to go into the settings of accessibility. easier access. Do you guys see the accessibility setting? Yeah, that's sugar.
Honestly, this in itself is interesting. Just to watch the usage of like
mouse and
yeah.
I can see some information there, but I cannot. And my eyesight has been corrected to the maximum extent. The specialist said your lens is the best, but you don't have a good film. So you're because of the good film, you don't get a good image. So that's where the central vision has a problem. So I think that's mine is one of the case of visual blindness. There are so many other cases of tunnel vision. There's different types of vision, and there is speech impairment, and there's hearing impairment. So accessibility helps everyone, not just that. So there, I think even on the mouse, right? So even on the iPhone, you can click 3 times and it will go into the accessibility mode. You can double tap. So I think it's in the settings.
Yeah, there's ease of access settings.
Yeah,
Ease of
the
access.
top one is
Yeah, ease of audio setting. Yeah, this one. See, thank you so much, all of it. So let's try to turn on mono audio.
I think that was the audio one.
Got a few tabs open up there, don't you?
Yeah, so let's see. I
There's
haven't.
audio alerts or visual alerts.
See, I think there should be I need to click on function. I think I
What are
have
you looking for?
Narrator.
narrator. Yeah, where is that?
Over on the side there. You go.
Yeah. Narrator. Oh.
Yeah.
Narrator dialogue. Don't show again. Checkbox unchecked. All plus hands up.
It's in the dialogue box trying to tell you about the narrator.
Narrator ending level 1. Welcome to narrator. This is narrator mode.
Yeah, I've accidentally turned that on before.
You might want to try the Macintosh Zoom function. That's what keeps me on Mac.
Mac. Yeah.
Its Zoom function is so much smoother
Yeah.
than
This one is
Windows Magnifier.
correct. I like that one too. Yeah.
What size monitor do you use?
28.
Okay.
28 inches. I need a minimum of 28 to be able to see information where I don't have to scroll much with the bigger file and a zoom like this one is at
I bought a 43-inch at home.
43. Yeah.
I get to work at home. Okay. There's no
Yeah.
company that would ever give me a monitor that big.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
There's no way.
Yeah. You really have to. That's true. So I've been going for 28 inches and 28, 29. That's enough for me to be able to work on a day-to-day basis
Okay.
because my mouse becomes my lens to grasp the information, and I think without these technologies I wouldn't have been working. So I'm so appreciative of all these companies that have taken accessibility to their heart and implemented solutions for the people. So and if we can follow the guidelines of government, and government also is setting it as an example, right? So let's recognize that and see how we can go forward.
So wait, that's at the operating system level?
Yeah, this is operating system, and there are tools on top of it. You can install like a non-visual desktop access, NVDA. You can install JAWS. JAWS is very expensive. That's more for
What
office.
is-
JAWS, JAWS, JAWS.
It-
It is an assistive technology tool that people who are completely blind can work in office like all the commands are shortcut. It knows how to show the menus for Office, Word, PowerPoint, anything. They can work on anything. So it's
Totally
very
blind
powerful.
and they can use it.
They can use it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people with disabilities use the technology using the assistive technologies, and they rely on, especially on the web, they rely on us to be able to provide the content or the schematics for the assistive technology to read. Like JAWS, it used to be relying on Microsoft because Microsoft is the one that has Office, right? And they gave all the functions that are needed for JAWS to interpret the information. So they could easily work with desktop applications. And it's very expensive too. It's, I think, $1,000 or more than that for one license of JAWS. So
What can the design guides for like material design and Microsoft's Fluid design, do they cover any of this?
Yeah, I think especially if you're Microsoft or Google or Apple, Facebook, Twitter, these kind of technologies, they know they need to conform, so they have solutions. They might not be implementing everything, depending on their usage of that particular area. So we don't know, unless they certify that we have already gone through. Nobody goes through your website and goes and I think there are nowadays companies are doing that because they want to sue the organization. They are doing that deliberate testing of your website. So let's say you are a bigger organization on the street, and this technologist knows how to understand what level of accessibility you're providing, and as soon as they understand that, they are going to start decoding your website, and as soon as they start looking at the violations, they'll document that violations, and they'll categorize in level A, level AA, level AAA. If you're not even meeting level A, then it is like you are being a public website, you are taking money in the e-commerce, and you are not providing services for everybody. So that could be a challenge.
I can easily imagine a business model where they say, hire us to fix it, or we will sue you.
Yes. See, that is what we talked earlier, where I'm okay if 90% of the proceedings goes to the real people who needs accessibility. So if it is just for you, then that is the law has been given for good purpose, good intention, right? So how many of us over here think driving is a right or driving is a privilege?
Privilege.
See, the driving is a privilege, and if I asked a few people, they were thinking it was right. Yeah, it's a privilege. When you lose the privilege, you know the value of the privilege. And
because you have to pay for it.
Exactly.
You have to buy the car, you have to buy the insurance, you have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
it's a
have
privilege.
to buy the insurance.
They probably governments here around the world if you don't.
Big truck. Be careful.
Yeah. If it was a right, we'd have those things for free.
Yeah.
We don't. It's definitely free.
Yeah, it's a privilege. 100%. So
what kind of car you drive is a privilege.
Yes.
You get to choose how much you spend.
Yes. Correct. Yeah, I think even with the red light versus green and yellow, so it's very challenging. It's very tempting on orange to just cross over, just thinking that okay, it will still be orange and I can still cross over to the road. But that's
they have color in ARIA.
The color in yes, not in ARIA, but in the accessibility guidelines there are level A. Level A is 3. 1:3, so contrast has to be 1:3, okay. And level AA is 1:4.5, and level AAA is 1:7. So you have very high contrast if you AAA. You have medium contrast with 4.5, and if you are 1:3, you are AA. And I've seen some organizations with brand colors on white are less than 3. That is, they are 2.1. contrast. So that means they are not even meeting the level A. So as soon as an accessibility police, I think there is an accessibility police these days, right?
Is there?
Yeah, the ones that are testing the websites and the ones that are going to the hotels and seeing if the accessibility ramps are there. So somebody is playing the accessibility police area, and that police sees your brand colors that are not there, then they can easily document, and then they can file a lawsuit.
But if you colorblind though, I mean, red and green, to me, they might be the same, but the contrast will be identical.
Awesome. Great point.
That's not the only two colors that colorblind people can see.
Right, but I just use that for this. I don't know. So
that's a more common one. But
that's a fantastic example. And let me answer you how the designers take that challenge and design it. So they just don't rely on the color, they rely on the shape. So if there is anything that is relying on the color, or either make a shape or have a text. So it will be a save button. It will not be a green button with an icon that is not labeled or anything. So it will be a shape or a save button or submit button or a shape, a different shape to understand.
Do that. They'll label your part.
pieces that are the same color, the same shape or a letter.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, there is different ways to convey information, so the color blind can also understand the information.
Sure.
Yeah. Any questions?
How much can that narrator do? Like,
It just flows through like the text, and it cannot understand where you want to go in between, so you have to tab. So let's say instead of going to the fourth one, right, you want to tab into the first one. So the narrator, as soon as you start tabbing, it will go in the sequence, and then you have to tell it to go into this and hit the space bar or enter, and you still have to navigate. Narrator is like a navigator, right? You still have to drive, and it will just try to tell you where.
but it works on any program since it's
Excuse me?
It works on any program, like you can.
Yeah,
it would work
most
in
of them.
Chrome
Most
or-
of them. It works on most of them that gives the context. And if you go to the website, also probably it will work. But again, it will jump into different areas where you're not expecting, because the code has not. And that is the whole session today. Was let's code for accessibility, where we can start giving the narrator. Here's the information for the image. Here's the information for the video content that we put. There's caption or there's a transcript or something like that. So it's just a tool that users will use, but it doesn't interpret all the information. User still has to understand the information. That's why it comes in with the understandable as a guideline. So is the information understandable? That's it.
I have a question. A lot of people have a preference for dark themes versus light themes. Where does that fit into accessibility?
Yeah, a contrast ratio. If it is a contrast, is 1:7. It doesn't matter if it's a dark theme or light theme. For me, I tried dark colors for Visual Studio's WebStorms or development tools. I did not like it. I like white, and then darker black text or whatever, higher contrast.
Do you work in an office most of the time?
I work at the office and also at home. Mostly home these days, but I used to be in the office, and everybody who works with me knows that they have to have some patience.
Okay.
Or I will help them with patience.
Yeah, because what I found was that in most corporate environments, there's painful, fluorescent lights all the time, and having a white background on most of the screens was just really, really painful. And
Yeah.
now that I get to work from home, I prefer the dark theme for almost everything. And even like Mac OS Catalina has a dark theme for the entire OS.
Yeah.
And there's an extension that I use for both Chrome and Firefox called Dark Reader.
Yeah.
That will basically inject extra CSS into pages that the authors didn't put there.
Yes.
To flip the colors around, and
Yes,
I find
yeah.
that essential.
It's amazing because it's also preference, right? As long as it is 1:7, then it has a good contrast ratio. Then you are meeting the AAA standard. Then it's a preference on you might like black, I might like white.
Okay.
So it could be anything. So.
But in accessibility, they only care about the contrast, not which one is more dominant.
No.
Okay.
They care about 1:7. If you are meeting 1:7 or above, then you are golden. So
Okay.
there's no need. And if you are 1:2, then it's very, very, very challenging for people to even change the color, because there are different shades of gray which are just a tad bit away, but they are less than, and people use those as theme colors, right? They're branding colors. And these branding colors, if they are less than 1:3, then they are in a very danger zone with accessibility if they are providing accessibility services on the internet.
Yeah, it's usually marketing people who get to pick the colors.
Yes,
So,
yes.
not
And
any sort
if
of
they do
technical-
not understand accessibility, they will be picking the colors that they think awesome brand look and feel. But they have to be careful about accessibility.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions, please? Feel free.